Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cold Hard Truth podcast. I'm Jack Smith.
And I'm Anish Gupta.
Anish, good to have you back. How's it going?
It's been good. It's been good. First week of college, pretty much in the books. I'm actually back home for the weekend, but yeah, it's excited to come back here and let's talk some football because I missed it.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. A lot of new stuff today. Next week is going to be the big episodes. All three of us back on doing week one picks, preseason winners and losers, a whole bunch of great stuff. But today, just kind of a quicker episode going over some news that we've seen so far. Travis Etienne is out for the season, as well as the Jaguars have done just a lot of big things, including trading away Gardner Minshew, naming Trevor Lawrence the week one starter, a whole bunch of other stuff. Some other QE battles have been decided, like Teddy Bridgewater being named the Broncos quarterback, Jameis Winston being named the Saints quarterback. We'll go over our opinions on those decisions and what we expect from those guys. And then the Ravens also got a little bit of news going on with the Sean Wade trade, the J.K. Dobbins injury. We'll dive into that. And then round it out by talking about Sam Darnold's new role in the Panthers as a game manager and how he looked in the one half of football he got to play this preseason. But before we get into any of that, Jadeveon Clowney this week, Anish, came out and he said that, they like going against the guards because they're not real athletes down there in the trenches. And so I felt like we needed to start off this episode by, defending guards and all offensive linemen a little bit because we talk about quarterbacks a lot, talk about the running backs, the receivers. We don't get to talk about the men in the trenches maybe as much as we should. And so I figured kind of got to use this time, defend those guys a little bit because guards are athletes.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, there's a different kind of athlete from the guy that runs a 4.2 40 to, the guy who's just mauling people down in the trenches. So Jadeveon Clowney needs to shut up. Like, first of all, he has 3 sacks in the past 2 seasons. Everyone has seen the video of him trying to do the drill with the tackling dummies and just completely falling over himself. He needs to stop talking. He needs to pay a little bit of respect to the guard position because they are real athletes. They're just as much real athletes as he is. And so I figure we need to, defend the guards a little bit. And I know you're a Browns fan. It's kind of mixed up with a lot of Brown stuff. So what do you think?
I mean, I think you said it pretty clearly. Like, guards are athletes too. In fact, we have 2 of the best guards in the National Football League. So I'm going to defend those guys out there, Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller. And again, I've always been a big offensive line guy. I always say it's one of the biggest parts to an offense. I think it's the second most important thing for an offense, and honestly, the second most important positions in football, like the left tackle. Even the guard position can be very key. You see how Quentin Nelson can impact an offensive line like that. And I think for a guy like Jadeveon Clowney to be saying something like that, it's a little bit weird considering, like you said, he hasn't really shown out in his NFL career. I mean, he's had a couple Pro Bowl seasons, but other than that, just hasn't been that game-changing impact player that we expected coming out in 2014 from South Carolina. And also, I don't want him to bring this type of buzz to Cleveland. We saw what happened a couple of years ago when Cleveland had a lot of, heads watching us. So I don't like that part. And, he's been the only guy to bring some type of buzz. Everyone else has been rather quiet. But yeah, I think other than that, I just don't want him to say anything. I want this team to keep it under the low. And I'm glad it didn't cause any locker room problems. I'm sure it just might have been all fun and joke. But even in that, I mean, you can't really say something like that, especially being in the National Football League. And there was a clip, I think Jack showed it. I don't want to steal too much of your thunder, but if you want to take over, I mean, it was a clip of just Quentin Nelson mauling him, and I thought that was really funny. So
Yeah, I mean, you got guys like Quentin Nelson in the league who have physically just dominated Jadeveon Clowney, and you've got in the locker room Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio. So, like, how do you go face those 2 guys? And I really hope that they put him on his ass in practice one day.
they definitely
I
have.
want to see that because come on now. Guards are athletes. Jadeveon Clowney needs to maybe focus on himself, getting on the field and making some real plays and not focusing on the guards. But getting into more of the stuff from the episode, we talked about there's a lot of stuff going on with Jaguars right now. We'll start with maybe the biggest news of the week. Travis Etienne, the first round running back, is out for the entire season with a Lisfranc injury. He's going to go into full recovery. He'll be ready for next season. But I first of all, I'm not trying to make this sound like I'm happy Etienne is injured at all or that I'm not focusing on that. But this is exactly what I've been saying all off season, probably for about the past year. This is why you don't draft the running back position early. This is why you don't invest too much stock in the running back position. And it just makes even less sense, like we've talked about all off season, when they had James Robinson. But with Travis Etienne out for the season, that gives James Robinson a big boost. Fantasy owners definitely gives them a big boost, but it's kind of just a lot of dysfunction going around the Jaguars right now, and this injury only adds to it. Of course, still prayers up to Travis Etienne, but the Jaguars, they kind of screwed up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it was pick 25, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. It was right after Najee went. I think it might have been a couple picks after, but I mean, like you, I was really shocked. I didn't know if it was to please T-Law because, I mean, we kind of didn't like T-Law. I don't think had even a say. He was just really happy that, he got his college teammate back. But again, yeah, like I said, I mean, James Robinson had one of the best undrafted rookie running back seasons of all time. Like, him and I remember Philip Lindsay also, but he made the NFL top 100 for a reason. Like his peers respected him. He's a good running back. And, for someone with a bright future, why do you go and get someone like Travis Etienne? Are you trying to do a running back by committee? I just didn't think it made sense just because I thought James Robinson could handle those 3-down roles. And for a first round pick in the NFL, it matters so much just because there is parity in, different rounds of players being picked. I mean, not as much as maybe the NBA with like first and second rounders, but in the NFL, it does matter. I mean, you are considered a first round pick for a reason, whether, it's how good you did in college or it's just, what you could bring to a team. That's why, they're so valuable in today's NFL. And a lot of players that may be good now aren't even worth the first round pick just because of the future that it could give you. So with pick 25, there could have been plenty of things that they could have gone with. They could have gotten another corner alongside CJ Henderson. They could have gotten a good defensive player at linebacker. I mean, there was just a lot of things that the Jaguars could have done. And I'm just really confused with some of the other things they made. Some of the other moves. Like, I don't think we mentioned it on the doc, but I mean, Joe Schobert for a 6th rounder. I mean, the guy had 147 tackles and 3 picks last year. That was honestly one of his best statistical seasons. And again, as a Browns fan, I know how good he's been. But to let him go also, and get him for just a 6. I mean, the Jags have been doing these questionable moves for the last 2 years, right? AJ Boye for the 4th. Just a lot of things. I mean, they've let go of Malik Jackson, a lot of, moves that I thought not the best. And
yeah. And Ronnie Harrison to your Browns.
Yeah.
Plus the talks
I didn't even
about
mention Ronnie, but yeah, I think
plus the talks about CJ Henderson being traded as well.
It's a lot of turmoil, and I just don't get what they're trying to do because they've been in a rebuild, in my opinion, since the end of the 2018 season. Because obviously they made the AFC Championship, and then the year after they had some injuries, but they've been in a rebuild for quite some time now. And I think they've, instead of accelerated it, they've kind of put themselves in an even further hole. And I just don't know what type of young talent that they fully believe in. The only guy that I think they've really invested in is Miles Jack. And other than that, I just haven't seen the Jags really, commit to any young guys. That's just aside from T-Law, of course.
Well, and they didn't. I mean, realistically, they did not commit to T-Law the entire offseason up until a couple days ago. It was a complete quarterback battle with a guy who they took number 1 in the draft, who was supposed to be the next best thing in the NFL, and they were bringing Gardner Minshew, giving him first team reps, giving him preseason reps, and making it seem like there was a battle going on there. Yeah. And then immediately when T-Law wins the job, they trade off Gardner Minshew. Like, what was the point? Why have him around?
I think it's just, again, it's so many questionable moves that, the NFL community is just honestly unsure about. And that was kind of what the Jags were going to bring in, especially with Urban Meyer, his first time being in the NFL. I think a lot of us saw this with like Chip Kelly with the Eagles. Like, this is another parallel that I can bring. He made a lot of weird moves, but I mean, it kind of worked for a year. And then, after that just didn't, kind of pan out. So it'll be really interesting to see. I mean, this Jacksonville team, it's got a lot of young talent. I mean, you can point players here and there all over the team, but as a collective unit, how are they going to perform? And then, I don't want to take too much of Jack's topic, but like, I think in the preseason, they just, there were some times where I kind of questioned it. I watched the Browns Jags game, and their defense looked very, very questionable, and especially their offense too. I mean, we were getting pressure on T-Law pretty much the entire time he was there. And aside from that one pass to Marvin Jones, which obviously caught a lot of highlight from the media, but other than that, I mean, just wasn't really impressed by, any of the Jags playmakers. So I'll pass it on to you, Jag. I mean, aside from the game against Dallas that I think was either in the morning or yesterday. I can't remember.
I think it still might be going on.
I think it still might be going on. But I mean, I just caught a glimpse of that touchdown to Pharaoh Cooper and the dime he had over the seam. But yeah, I'll let you continue it on. I mean, offense just hasn't been impressive.
To kind of round out that portion of what we're talking about the Jaguars, I've got no problem with the rebuilding team trying to trade some of the players they have for value. or if they're trying to, make space for the young guys, move on from other players like AJ Boye for value. But they have not gotten any value for these guys that they've moved. And if you're the Jaguars, a team that realistically has not drafted super well in the late rounds, a 6th-round pick that you're going to get for any of these guys, they're not hitting on these picks. Like, they're not hitting on the 6th-round picks. And just like we said, trading Gardner Minshew away, they didn't get anything for him either. So you waste Trevor Lawrence's snaps all preseason, all offseason to say that Gardner Minshew has a chance. And when he loses the job, you don't even have that guy as your backup. So a guy that you were giving first team reps to the entire offseason isn't even on the team now. Like, and it wasn't even for a third or a second or a fourth.
A 6th-round pick. I mean,
6th-round pick.
If I'm the Eagles, I'm really happy with that. I mean, like, you get a solid backup who's played honestly, he's played a considerable amount of games in the NFL. I mean, this is just not a good look for Jacksonville. And
it's just a waste of time. Concerned. It's a waste of reps. And like, I got no problem with pushing Trevor Lawrence, not just handing him the starting job, but they took it too far. And it makes no sense to trade Gardner Minshew after that. Have him as a backup who has all this experience. So say Trevor Lawrence goes down in week 3, he's got to miss a couple weeks. Great, Gardner Minshew got all of these first team reps. But now you're just going to ship him off for a 6th-round pick. I mean, we've kind of all been echoing it for the entire offseason, Shrikar included. We have not liked what the Jaguars have been doing. Like, it does not make sense.
What's crazy is I was still high on them just because I thought T-Law could uplift them. And even to this day, I still think T-Law is going to get a couple wins, for this club, like, that people just won't expect. But again, just from top down, they're just very, very questionable. Like, I wouldn't say it's like, it's completely bad. And I wouldn't say they've, done things that, like, oh my God, it's going to make them so much worse. But all I can say is just, I'm puzzled. Like, I'm confused on what they're trying to do. And I mean, that's kind of a bad thing just because the Jags are full of uncertainty. And I think for someone of Trevor Lawrence's stature, did you want to give him the full keys right away or did you not? We're still kind of unsure with that just because of how you mentioned it too, Gardner Minshew getting some of those first team snaps. And we've talked about it too with how quarterbacks, I actually wanted to come on the pod and say this. I think aside from Mac Jones, I haven't seen enough from any of the any of the 4 others to where I'm like, okay, they should for sure start. Maybe Justin Fields, but starting right away, I don't think they should start right away. I don't think any of them, even Zach Wilson. I think he's looked good, but I just don't know, for a rookie quarterback to really get right in there, especially with the team around him. If it looks bad, confidence is a big thing. And we've seen it. I mean, if their confidence gets shaken early on, it's pretty scary. It's a big thing I'm saying, but honestly, aside from Mac Jones, I don't think any of the 4 others are ready to start right away week 1. I'd say give him a couple of weeks. Zach Wilson, I'd say, is number 2. Obviously, if you've seen the video with Zach and Justin Fields, I'm high on both, but I think Zach is a little bit better. And even with the preseason, I know this kind of switched to the Jets, but I just don't think week 1 he'd be ready. I think give him a couple of weeks before he could really show out.
Well, they don't have anyone anyway, so
yeah, that's the problem. That is the problem. Like, I think that's the problem with some of these teams, with Jacksonville, New York, and that's why it's hard for a rookie quarterback to go to a bad team like this. But they always get picked early, right? Like picks 1 and 2. That's just how it works, and that's why you see, like, for example, Winston and Mariota, they just couldn't really succeed because of where they went.
Yeah, I disagree with you on the idea that Zach Wilson isn't ready to start week 1. Maybe it's because I'm a little bit more tuned into Jets camp. He's been super mature. His interviews are amazing.
Aside from the holdout, he's in.
Well, I don't think that was. I think people made that a bigger deal than it really was. I really think that him and the Jets were figuring that out. But his answers to questions, his reasoning behind.
I'll give you that. Yeah, things, he does sound very.
He threw some picks in practice, but he literally came out and said, someone asked him about it. They were saying, what's your thought process behind that? And he said, if he comes out and throws picks in practice, he knows what he can't get away with. I mean, it's Mahomes did the exact same thing when
he's a gunslinger. It's just how it was in BYU.
But he's finding his limits, and that's super smart because that you can in practice. If you go out in the NFL and you don't know what your limits are, you're going to throw picks that actually matter. But in practice, it doesn't matter. Like Mahomes did the same thing.
He was more ready than Darnold was.
So I think they were probably maybe the same amount of ready, or Wilson might be a little less, but there's two differences. There were good backup options behind Darnold and Teddy B. There's really none right now behind Wilson, but also I think the team is a lot better and the offense is a lot better and the coaching is a lot better with Wilson. So
Yeah.
like I think we're talking about people talk about Trevor Lawrence like, oh, is he going to let the Jaguars down? No, I think the question should be whether the Jaguars are going to let him down. I believe, and I'll say this forever, that the Jets let Sam Darnold down by not having a good enough team around him, good enough coaches around him. I don't think that Zach Wilson has those same issues. I think the offensive line is much better. They've got a lot more depth too. What you're talking about Morgan Moses potentially being a backup at right tackle, like your swing tackle. That's pretty damn good. You got Elijah Moore, you have Corey Davis, Denzel Mims. There's a lot of depth at wide receiver.
That Wilson to Davis connection, I'm actually excited.
Not even mentioning Jamison Crowder. You've got some decent options at tight end. You've got depth at running back with Ty Johnson, Tevin Coleman, Michael Carter as a rookie. And overall, having LaFleur and Saleh there, I just feel like Wilson is in a more secure spot.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like he might not be more ready than Darnold was, but I do think that the results are going to be better just because it's
I think
he's more
suited to start than I actually think he's more suited to start than Sam Darnold was back in 2018. And I think honestly, out of every quarterback like so far for the Jets that could have, I think Zach Wilson's been the best fit and I think he would have been and is the best fit for the New York Jets. I
think he would have been a better fit than Justin Fields. I don't think Trey Lance would have been as good of a fit. I honestly feel like maybe outside of Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson is probably the best fit.
Yeah.
And I feel like, honestly, the way we're seeing right now, we were like, oh, should the Niners go with Mac Jones or Trey Lance or Justin Fields? Like, we didn't know. I feel like I can confidently say all 5 quarterbacks ended up where they were supposed to be. I feel like they're in their best
because
fit.
You're right. Because, I mean, Trey, who I've said is honestly the least ready and needs the most time, he's in the best place to get time to learn. So
I feel like outside of Trevor Lawrence, who he probably would have fit anywhere. And honestly, I would say the Jags aren't really.
The Jags are the only team that he could have gone to. I just don't think any of these quarterbacks could do anything in Jacksonville. I don't know.
I would be saying no matter who's in Jacksonville, I don't know how that Jags uniform's looking on them. I don't know how that offense I'd probably say about everyone else, but Zach Wilson's found a great spot. He's able to move around. He's able to hit receivers underneath and go deep and make throws on the run. Trey Lance has all the time in the world eventually when he needs it. He's going to be able to run. He's going to be able to throw. He's got good options at tight end and running back to check down. I mean, he's got the athletic receivers like Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Justin Fields, I feel like the Bears are an amazing fit.
It's amazing. I mean,
looking at it now,
in the preseason, it looks really good. Just how he's able to escape out the pocket. His offensive line's honestly been helping him a decent amount.
And watching the way he plays, I honestly don't think he would have fit with the Broncos, who were the main team that passed on him.
Yeah.
And so, and then Mac Jones.
I'm so that. I mean, I wish we could have our own segment on. I'm so happy about that. That was, I mean, match made in heaven. I mean, in my scouting report too, I wanted him to go to New England so bad. And I can't believe it happened. He just fell into their lap, and you're seeing it now, how good he is. But I think Cam's going to get the starting job. I mean, I know we didn't even have that on our topic bank, but I'm glad Mac's in New England. But yeah,
you think Cam starts though?
Huh?
You think Cam starts?
Cam's going to start.
No, that's what I'm saying. You think Cam starts? I said the other week, I came out with a quote that I think Mac Jones will start. And I think that with the new COVID mix-up too.
Yeah, the COVID mix-up definitely throws some, but you never know with Bill Belichick. I mean, he'll probably name it 2 days before, and he's already given first team reps to the quarterback that he's wanted. We just really don't know with him. I just think he's so good, but
the allure of having Tom Brady light back with the Patriots, in Mac Jones, I think it makes too much sense.
Sensational. I'd say it's been Mac 1, Zach 2, Justin 3, T-Law 4, and then
I've got to dig back. I've got to dig into Fields' game from yesterday. I haven't got a chance to watch it yet. I think I would have said Mac and Zach kind of tied for 1, Justin Fields 2. Trevor Lawrence today, with what I've seen stat wise, I'm sure he's jumped his way above Trey Lance, but they've all been good for what I've expected.
I've not been happy with Trey, if I'm being real.
Seriously.
I have not. And I mean, I came out with a video on it. Obviously, I know he's gonna need some time, but from what I've seen and from how much he's been hyped up in camp to produce that, aside from a couple throws, yeah.
That's the thing. Like I'm not paying attention to the hype. He's where I'm expecting him to be. Like this is what I've expected. So like I'm not disappointed whatsoever.
That's why you and I are like the only objective viewers on Trey Lance. That I feel like
Shrieker is too. I was surprised.
Shrieker also, yeah. I think us three, we've been pretty objective on Trey Lance, which is why we're not so shocked.
Yeah.
And which is why we're like, oh, okay, this is what we expected. But Niner fans, on the other hand,
some of them for sure. Some other QB battles were decided to Teddy Bridgewater starting with the Broncos, Jameis Winston starting for the Saints. What are your opinions on those two?
I think for the Broncos, I actually saw like a couple videos on it. I think Drew Lock, he's looked a lot more mature. I mean, first to start off with him, he looked a lot more mature, and he had a couple that first preseason game. I think he had like two like deep completions. I think one of them was to KJ Hamler. I remember he had like an average of like 30 yards per attempt for a solid like portion of the half he played. But I think Teddy Two Gloves, just again, we saw a throw to Cortland Sutton the other day that was just sensational. I think he's just a little bit more poised and less prone to make mistakes. That's Teddy B. And I honestly, for the Denver team with a good defense and good supporting cast, right? You got Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler, and then you got running backs Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon. Even the tight ends are pretty solid with Noah Fant, and that offensive line is pretty good, led by Garrett Bowles. You just need someone who can manage the game and won't have many turnovers. And we've seen Teddy B do it with New Orleans. Obviously, in Carolina, he had a subpar year, but I think if he just really hones in and doesn't make mistakes, I think this Denver team could be really, really solid, especially with that defense. So he just needs, I think that's why they went with him, just because he's less prone to make mistakes. That's just my opinion on it.
Yeah. So I think you're right. Like totally. Teddy Bridgewater was the safer option. And yes, bringing like all the things you mentioned with the pieces on offense and the good defense, having that safer option, they'll be solid, and solid will beat teams like the Raiders. Solid will beat teams like we've already talked about the Jets or the Jaguars or like things like that. But I don't think solid will beat the Chiefs. I don't think solid's going to beat the Chargers, to be honest. Like maybe outside of Denver for sure. I don't think solid's going to beat the Chargers. And yeah, Drew Lock, if you started him, he'll probably have those weeks where he's going to lose that game to the Raiders because of the mistakes he's making. But there's the upside there. And I figure, honestly, since he's got experience too, you start with the upside. And if he's making mistakes, then you bring in the solid down to earth.
I think that's a little bit, I mean, I guess you could say, because you could kind of throw a similar parallel with the Titans, because, you know, Mariota had the upside. Tannehill was kind of the down to earth, less prone to make mistakes. And I think it kind of just happened that way, right? You saw that Mariota just couldn't win you those type of games, and then you kind of put in Tannehill and he takes off. So something like that, but it's tough to say. I mean, you're right, because I was also going to throw out the fact that Teddy B is new to this whole system, and Drew Lock's kind of been under it for a couple of years now. So it's really tough. I just think right now you would want to see, like, you know, how he could do with, you know, less mistakes, and also Drew Lock, right? Because if you lose games early on, in the NFL, it's very hard to climb out of it. And I think Teddy B right now, as of right now, gives you a better chance to win than Drew Lock. You're right. Drew Lock has that upside, but I think right now I would say Teddy B, he's also looked really good in preseason too. Like, we can't deny that. But yeah, that's what I would say. But you're right. Like, I think that's why this quarterback controversy in general, or this QB battle, it's so neck and neck that it's just really hard to, like, are you banking on upside or are you banking on the floor? And I think you and I are kind of differing on that. You're just banking on upside. I'm banking on
So I think the Broncos probably think that their floor with Teddy Bridgewater is playoff contention. And I think their floor with Drew Lock is, you know, top 10 maybe pick. Top 10 pick. So like, I understand they're making the safer decision, but in a division with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and Justin Herbert and the Chargers, like, safe, I just don't like it. Like, what's also the worst thing that happens?
The last year to prove it for Drew Lock, and you don't really want him to be your backup, considering what you invested a lot into him. So, and he's played 18 games. So I get what you're coming from.
And like, it's easy if Drew Lock isn't playing well, you bench him and you play Teddy Bridgewater for the rest of the year, and you've still got that good floor. But if you start Teddy Bridgewater, like, it's so much of a harder decision to bench a safer quarterback, because, like, at what point do you bench him? Is it you're benching him because they aren't making the explosive throws? That's a tough decision to make. Like, that's a tough trigger to pull. Yeah. It's not as black and white as, oh my God, you just threw 2 picks, Teddy's coming in. Like, it's and you can wind up a couple of games down the road, you're 5-4 and your season's kind of slipping away because you can't pull away in games or you can't win the big games or make the big plays. And you know what? Maybe the Broncos know more than we do for sure about like what their plans are for Teddy B or what they've seen in training camp. But I think no one can dispute the fact Drew Lock has more upside. And in the division that they're in and at the state they're in, I really think that the Broncos kind of need to bank on that upside and then figure it out if it doesn't.
But it's also like where are they right now? Like where, because you're right. Like when you were trying to say like what could Teddy B give you and what can Drew Lock give you, I think the Broncos kind of know that they're third right now. Like I think if there's kind of a clear cut right ranking in the AFC West, it's Chiefs 1, Chargers 2, and then Broncos 3, Raiders 4.
Right, but
I think
like I love the Chargers, but the Broncos could push.
Well, they could. That's why I'm saying the gap between 2 and 3 is not far.
No.
So I think that's why you're right. You could bank on the upside in terms of, getting over the Chargers. But I think Denver's kind of decided that Drew Lock isn't their franchise guy with this move. I think they've kind of said like, okay, as of right now, Drew Lock can't be, he's not worthy of a second extension.
Which makes passing up on Justin Fields look even worse.
Yeah. And I think time will tell with the season. That the season will really be a true indicator of that. And just of how Fields looks and how the Broncos look without him. I think
so like I get making the safer decision is that there's a lure to that and they're trying to maintain where they are, but like they're not going to have Von Miller forever. They're going to lose some of these pieces. Justin Simmons is already like I think 30, 31. They're losing pieces and it's not like they're an up and coming rebuilding team. They're right in that middle. So like their window, I would say, is closing more than opening up as the future goes on. And I'm not a big Drew Lock fan. I have not been a Drew Lock fan. I don't think he's built to be a successful NFL quarterback, but again, there's something there. And I feel like it's better.
He's had flashes, like the magic word.
that is your magic word. But you start Drew, in my opinion, you start Drew Lock. If the flashes aren't there, if he's not getting it done, you put in Teddy Bridgewater for the rest of the way. If you put in Teddy B, you are admitting that Drew Lock is not the guy. And you are
that's I think the move that they're making. That's the move that they sent. And that's why I'm not that mad at it because I kind of agree with them.
No, I do, but like I just feel like you kind of got to flip it the other way because you let him start. If he doesn't work, he's not the franchise guy. I think as much as I've said, I'm not a big fan of Drew Lock. I don't think he can get it done. I don't know yet whether he's not the franchise guy there. If you give him 3 weeks, we'd be able to know. Yes,
you're right. There's been injuries all over the team. And I think he himself, there have been times where he's not been 100% too. So it's a tough one with Denver, but I think the next one with the Saints is a little bit easier. That's where I was excited. A way easier one to talk about. I mean, both of us, ironically, Shrikar is not here. I'll kind of start it off with Winston being named their starter. Both of us are high on Winston, and Shrikar is a little bit low.
No, he's still high on Winston.
I thought he said that they would go under on the wins because of him.
I don't quite remember, but I
thought we were higher on. Both of us, I know, are big believers in Jameis Winston, and I think Jack put up a video of him saying that Jameis should be the starter back in January, and I completely agreed. I think he's looked so good. I think I've always been high on Jameis Winston. Even that year, he went 30 and 30. He had like 36 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. Yeah. I was like, okay, like there's still some upside there just because of what he was able to do. Like there were some games where he just have an insane game-winning drive. There'd be some games like against the Panthers, he'd throw 5 picks. But like here with New Orleans, he looks so much more poised. Like it's like insane to see how different he is. Maybe it's the LASIK eye surgery. I don't know, but like.
Well, yeah. And did you see the warm up he was doing with his hand-eye coordination and like with the little ball? Like he's dedicated, man.
That's what I'm saying. He's really put in the work. Like even that offseason before last year, there were clips of him doing like some insane workouts, and everyone was like, "Oh, but he's not starting." I mean, he's been patient with his time, and he really deserves this. Like those throws to Marquise Callaway. Like those were insane. Like I'm still like trying to comprehend how, the one where he's falling in the end zone. I'm still trying to question like that's genuinely one of the best throws I have ever seen. Like to put it in that spot. And the second one, obviously the one-hander, that was insane too. Like he's looked really good, and I'm so glad that he's getting his chance. And I think Saints fans should be so excited because this team can genuinely make some noise. Like they could make some noise with Tampa Bay. They could honestly play anybody with Jameis Winston right now. I think they can go toe to toe with anybody. And you can quote me on that. I'm seeing him these last few weeks has made me really high on New Orleans. Despite MT and the whole thing, Winston's looked really good. And I'm so glad he's getting the starting job. That's my
opinion. And like I was of the belief that when he was learning under Drew Brees and Sean Payton last year, I would not be surprised if there was a time last year where Jameis Winston in practice or just Jameis Winston in general was looking better than Drew Brees. And he probably could have gone out and done a better job than Drew Brees in some games. There was no chance.
In the divisional round, he could have put up a better fight.
And there was no chance that was ever going to happen. But I kind of figured, like, with the surgery and with all the dedication he's putting in and just learning behind Drew Brees and behind Sean Payton, who has a completely different mindset than Bruce Arians did in Tampa Bay. Like I was really believing in Jameis Winston. So I'm super happy to see that he's going to get to start this year. And yeah, he had 30 interceptions that one year. But another thing that people like kind of forget to bring up is so many of those interceptions were in times where like he had to force it, like a fourth down, end of game. Like you need a touchdown or you need to just go for
passes. People don't realize a lot of them were.
Yeah. Like, of course there were the bad reads and the bad throws, but it wasn't 30 terrible interceptions. It wasn't. So I'm really excited to see, and I've been high on him all season. I don't remember the exact hot take I had, but I don't remember if I've already said this either. I really do think Jameis Winston can make the Pro Bowl this year. Like that was kind of like one of my bolder takes. Mm-hmm. I really think Jameis Winston could, and I think he can take this Saints team to the playoffs. I think he's much better than Taysom Hill, and I think that Sean Payton and the Saints realized if Taysom Hill is their starting quarterback for the season, they lose so much versatility in their offense. So it makes much more sense to just go with Jameis, 100%. Take the upside play.
What's another one? I'll one up you on that. If the Saints somehow take the division and they make if they were to get, maybe the 1 or 2 seed, I could see Jameis Winston getting MVP votes. Like I genuinely could. If they go that, if he goes this, if he's able to produce this much, obviously that it's going to be weird without Michael Thomas and all that. I'll one up you and say that, but obviously I'm not going to double down on it.
No,
but I think,
and I don't think they're going to take the division from the Bucs.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I wouldn't bet any on that. But this team, considering the talent they still have around them, the fact that they were able to keep everybody, they still have their core, right? With Sean Payton, they obviously have Kamara. They have their offensive line still pretty much intact. They re-signed the 2 tackles that they needed to. They have their defensive playmakers that are still there. Lattimore, obviously Cam Jordan is still there. This Saints team still looks really good on paper. Yep. And now you add another element. You add that deep ball. You finally add that, the kind of the throwing deep part of the whole offense, because, despite, teams would kind of crowd the box because they knew it was either going to Kamara inside in between the tackles or just maybe an angle route, on a short passing play or through the flat. Teams would kind of space in with the Saints. And another thing, the Bucs were able to kind of utilize that in the playoffs just because they had Devin White and Levante David who could kind of cover both sidelines. Now you open up the playbook in so many different ways, because now they might have to run cover 3 to prevent post routes down the field, and that allows for inside routes to get a lot more open. So that's a little bit more of technical terms to kind of explain how the Saints can be a lot better this year. But Jameis Winston opens up a lot of opportunities, and I'm very happy that he's gotten the starting job.
Yeah, I mean, if he can limit the bad plays, he can be as good as anyone in the league.
It's a considerable if, but I think that it's that whole factor has kind of been diminished ever since that 30-30 season.
Yeah, and he's not gonna. He needed those big plays in Tampa Bay to get wins. He's not gonna need that as much in New Orleans. So if he plays a little bit safer, and I think he will, and I think he has learned a lot. I'll bet you he's learned a lot playing with the Saints. I'm a big believer in Jameis Winston this season. I think he's kind of one of those backed by the cold hard truth players this season. Yeah. So watch out for Jameis Winston. Super excited.
Let's just
to see.
Knock on wood we don't jinx him.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Jameis. If this doesn't work.
If we do, that would really suck.
that would suck.
Oh man, it's okay.
But moving on, the Ravens have had a lot of stuff going on. First of all, it literally pains me to see J.K. Dobbins hurt. One of the players I was most excited for this year, one of the players I was highest on this year. I was trying to take him in every fantasy mock draft or draft I did. I ended up taking him. I'm at least grateful I handcuffed him with Gus Edwards, but out for the season, torn ACL on preseason week 3 a screen pass. When are people? First of all, when are coaches going to learn? Take your players off the field.
So I think that's a debate that's going to continue on for the next like considerable amount of years. Because for one, they took out one preseason game because of that whole debate that's been lingering on. Two, it's so hard because you need to give your starters some time, like a little bit. And I think everyone kind of points out the last game is when you do it. Maybe give them a drive or two. And I think that debate is just going to span on for the next, few years because it's so hard to kind of really give a definitive answer, because I could still defend and say like, no, Dobbins still should have been out there to get some reps before the actual season starts, because you don't want his legs to be too fresh to where he's getting tackled and it could cause an injury in week 1. So there's so many things about that it's so uncertain to really say and make a definitive statement like, oh, he shouldn't have been out there. I just think it was very unfortunate. And obviously, I grew up watching him at Ohio State. He's one of my favorite backs to come out of there. So it really sucks, but it's hard to really say that he shouldn't have been out there. That's like my take.
I just think like, especially for running back, like you can get the same experience in training camp with your teammates. Like, I don't know. I just think
that's why like the whole I don't know, right? What do you have to say at the end? Like it's just so tough to really say.
Maybe there's some positions where it works. There's some positions where I understand it. Let the receiver go out there, run a couple routes. Let the quarterback go out there and make a couple throws. Like, I don't know. It's tough. You're right. You're right that you have to give them something, but I think there's some positions, especially a position like running back, where you're so easily injured. You're already getting a lot of wear and tear on your legs, and he's been in the system for a year now.
Think, but even in camp, right? They're still not going 100% on it. Like
then go 100% in camp, and then don't give them as many preseason reps.
Injuries could be caused by your own teammates, and that causes a little bit of concern. If someone's injuring your own team, that's a little bit bad. And that's why I think we've seen limited training camp injuries in the last couple of years, just because I think they've had these joint practices, and that's why you're getting a little bit of those better reps in terms of that. So I think joint practices have been good because of things like that. That way you're like going a little bit harder in those rather than against your own team. But still, I still defend the fact that you should play him a couple drives. And I know there's that risk, and it was off a screen pass too. It wasn't even like an in between the tackles run, which really sucks. I think it's just really unfortunate. Like, I mean, something like that is very, very rare to happen, just like a group tackle on something like that. But yeah, I mean, obviously, and the news literally just came out right before we recorded this, that they confirmed it was a torn ACL. So that just, I mean, all I can say is it really sucks. But I think from the Ravens perspective, like if you kind of want to go deeper lens here, because obviously Dobbins was a second-year back who had insane flashes last year, especially against the Bengals to end the season. But from the Ravens perspective, their offense, all their top 4 receivers are hurt. Hollywood Brown, Bateman, Miles Boykin, and I'm forgetting the third, Sammy Watkins. All their top 4 are all hurt. Like they have some type of injury right now. They're all questionable heading into week 1. Also,
and Mark Andrews has had some issues in training.
Yep, Mark Andrews too, and now Dobbins. Like this is a little bit concerning. Like who is Lamar going to throw to in the coming weeks? Which if I'm a Ravens fan, I'm a little bit concerned. Not too much, because none of these injuries aside from Dobbins is like long term. But the Ravens have been getting by the injury bug, and people really haven't taken notice just because the Colts have been hit by it so much, and I think they've overshadowed a lot of these other teams. But if I'm a Ravens fan, I'm a little bit concerned, especially with this Dobbins injury too. That hurts because of the upside that he brings. Like Gus Edwards is a good running back, and we've seen him, do well in the Ravens system. But Dobbins was that guy that brought, this X factor, or this kind of like this it factor to this offense, and you're going to kind of lose that. That's a big blow.
Like Edwards can get it done, but I think Dobbins could have like got it done and then some.
100%.
It's just crushing. But the bigger news, or I guess just as big news for the Ravens, they traded a rookie. Like you never see that happen. And a rookie who had been excelling in preseason, another one of your Ohio State Buckeyes, Shaun Wade, had been looking great for the Ravens in the secondary, but because of how many talented players they have in the secondary, they knew that he wasn't going to be able to make the team. So they traded him to the Patriots. Like that. You never see that. A rookie.
And to the Patriots, like that's an AFC rival. Like that. I think that's not even being talked about.
And that's a team who knows how to work with secondary players. Like Shaun Wade is in a great spot now.
Oh,
He was in a great spot before. Like,
you have no idea how ecstatic I am that Shaun Wade is going there, especially because he plays slot corner. And we know when he tried playing outside his final year, he was god awful. But when he was a slot corner, he was a consensus first round pick.
Yep.
Like, so to go to New England, right, where he can play that role, especially in that secondary, learning from those guys, just for Shaun Wade, just to talk, like, that is the best thing that could have happened to him. I know Baltimore is good, but this is literally like, this is a match made in heaven. And I think that's the Patriots. This is an absolute steal for them. I think this is such a great move. And I'm honestly still kind of in shock why the Ravens didn't. I know you kind of defended saying he wouldn't make the team and stuff, but.
Oh, I'm not defending it. Whatever. I'm not.
Oh, you're not. You're kind of giving like a reason maybe for why.
I'm pretty sure that's why. I mean, there's no other reason to trade a rookie, especially one who you
This is like the first time I've ever seen this too. Like I haven't had any, or I haven't heard of anything that's like been this kind of big, because Shaun Wade is kind of a big name. He was a big name for this class for a while. So to hear that, I was also taken aback. I don't get it. Like I'm kind of weird.
And they didn't even get a whole ton back for him.
Yeah.
Like the return was not huge.
I think it was like a late round pick. And
I think it was a late round pick this year, a late round pick next year, like 5th or 6th.
Yeah. I think it was 6th and a 7th or something.
And so like, I believe Wade was a 5th round pick this year. So they turn a 5th into a 5th and a 6th. Those like, you're getting some value back, but I find it unbelievable to believe that they could not find room on their roster for a rookie cornerback who had been looking great in the preseason.
Yeah.
That's it. No, there's just no way.
I don't get like, and I get it. Yeah. You got some value, but again, even then, right. When drafting a player, I don't care which round it is, you have the hopes, you've broken down his film, you've studied him, right? You've invested something into him, and to not even give him a shot his rookie year versus maybe a veteran that just hasn't lived up to his expectations. That's a questionable call. Like in the NFL, you never see something like that. I mean, I've seen undrafted rookies get cut, but or not make the team. But this one is a little bit puzzling.
Yeah, and they knew he would get poached off a practice squad, but I find it hard to believe that they could not find a spot for him on the real roster.
Yeah.
So.
I think the Patriots got now, like, they've made some buzz in a weird light, especially with the receivers, now Dobbins, now this. I don't know. I mean, they're still, don't get me wrong, they're still a great team on paper, and I think they're a playoff contender for sure. Mm-hmm. But some of these moves are a little bit questionable. And I mean, now, again, for the Ravens as a whole, I mean, like if their secondary starts to have some questions, maybe some injuries, oh, how bad this is going to look.
That's true. I mean, all it takes is one Marcus Peters injury to make them regret this trade instantly, or one playoff game against the Patriots where Shaun Wade picks off Lamar Jackson once.
Yeah. Like
there's a real good chance if the Ravens make the playoffs, they could be playing the Patriots. And
100%. Yeah. Those two teams. And I think I'd like that. This is just making me like improve my Patriots stock even more. Like again, the Ravens are a team that I could see missing the playoffs just because of how loaded the AFC is.
That was one of my hot takes, is that like, I wasn't saying it was going to happen, but I was saying I wouldn't be surprised if the Ravens, I think I said only one AFC North team makes the playoffs, both the Steelers and the Ravens miss.
Yeah. Like I think this is probably the most loaded AFC conference, like in terms of top to bottom, that I've ever seen, like in my time watching real-time football. Like we've always mentioned how the NFC has so many teams. I think the AFC as a whole is a way better conference. Like just look at, even in the preseason, did you see like NFC teams are like 4 and like 28 in the games that they've played against?
I don't put stocks into.
I put a little bit of that into just even, I know it's backups and stuff, but I think the AFC itself is a considerably better conference than the NFC right now. From top to bottom, I think it is. Like, aside from the Bucks, right? I think teams 2 till maybe 5 or 6, I'd say most are AFC. Like,
we might as well do it. Bucks. Yeah, you have Bucks at 1.
Yeah, obviously because they won the Super Bowl. I put Kansas City at 2.
Buffalo.
I'd put Buffalo at 3. At 4, I would either put Cleveland or Tennessee, and then
you're putting Tennessee. Like Cleveland, I understand. Tennessee over the Rams.
Just because I don't know what they're doing with Henderson and Michelle, and obviously their defense, they lost John Johnson and Troy Hill.
Well, and Staley.
Yeah.
I mean, I see it.
Huh?
I see it, but they also brought in Matthew
Also,
Stafford.
and then also Stafford. There's still a question mark there, right?
Yeah.
As much as we can say he's more talented than Goff. There's still a question. So yeah, I would say Cleveland and Tennessee and Rams are kind of in that same tier. And then I think then you can maybe put Green Bay, but I would also, I don't know. Like with Green Bay, I just think in my eyes, they're 10-11 win team this year.
I think
still good.
I think I've said this before. I have the Browns like preseason pick winning the Super Bowl, but like I still think the Rams right now are a better team than the Browns. Like I'd probably go Bucks. I guess I'll put Kansas City, Buffalo, but like flip it as much as you want. I'd probably go the Rams there, Cleveland, Green Bay, Tennessee, Dolphins, Patriots in some order, maybe.
But you see also, how most of
yeah. Also throw the Niners in there.
I think, yeah. I mean,
get the Saints in there somewhere too. Like, yeah. But no, I guess like there
are legitimately, I think, 10 or 11 teams in the AFC that could make noise in the playoffs, like 10 or 11. Maybe like, okay, I know I'll just throw them out there because kind of ended out. I would say the Chiefs, the Bills, the Titans, the Browns, the Dolphins, the Patriots, the Chargers. Did I miss anything?
You haven't said the Colts. I know you love your.
I do. Even with all the injuries, I'm still gonna throw them out there. The Colts. That was the one I was kind of waiting on. What is that? 8. There's 3 in the AFC East. Oh, I didn't even mention the Ravens or the Steelers. So those are another 2. The Broncos is also another one. There's just so many. Like,
yeah, we're really seeing the league round itself out, it's really fun to see.
Really good.
And that's why it's like, you're right. Like teams like a couple of years ago when the Dolphins did not have a great season, but they finished the end of the season by rattling off some wins. Like they were one of the worst teams in the league that year, but they made a lot of noise still. Like, that's what you're going to have that this year. Some teams, like maybe the Bengals, are not going to have a very good record, but they're not a bad team at all.
Yeah.
It's how
the NFL is. And I remember I said last year, like 28 teams could legitimately say they have a chance at the playoffs. I said that last year, except for I said Detroit. I think I said Jacksonville. I think I said New York. And I can't remember the 4th one. I think it was Cincinnati. But yeah, those were I thought aside from those, every team had a chance. But
yeah, the bottom of the league is far improved from the 5 years ago, couple of years ago even.
Yeah.
And we're going to see that.
NFL, yeah.
Like, I feel like it's not as much as the top teams in the league are getting even better, and just the apex of the NFL is so much better than it was a couple of years ago. I just think that the whole league is kind of rounding itself out and closing that gap from the bottom to the top.
Oh, 100%.
And it causes so many issues. And that's why, we might be wrong on players or teams a lot of the time, but it's not because if a team ends up with a bad record, it's not because they're bad. It's just because, the league is extremely competitive, and it's really fun to watch, and that's why the NFL is so much different than any other league.
And that's why I think the NFL is superior to anything else.
I mean, the Baltimore Orioles in baseball, they had a streak where they lost 19 games in a row.
Yeah.
It's just not the level of competition from top to bottom is no closer in any other league than the NFL. And it's really fun to see, but we had one more topic on this on the episode, and we can go over it kind of quickly. I haven't talked about Sam Darnold basically all off. I wanted to get a
Sam Darnold topic, and I was like, you know what? Go ahead. I'll totally let you.
He got to play one half in their last preseason game for the Panthers, got the entire first half. Wasn't incredibly impressed, but it looked better than the Sam Darnold that I've seen in the past. And it's because they've got him playing in a whole different role, and it makes sense for what they have. There was a tweet I saw from the David Newton, who's the ESPN beat reporter for the Panthers. He said Sam Darnold's 25 pass attempts in the first half, it was against Pittsburgh, traveled an average air yards of 4.6 yards. That is ridiculously low. And he had a great completion percentage for 120 yards. He's got this whole new role where they've got the weapons around him, unlike what the Jets had. And when they bring in Christian McCaffrey to that fold too, and the defense, they're just going to need Sam Darnold to be that game manager. And while I think Sam Darnold's a great quarterback, and I've thought that he could have been so much more, and now he's kind of being relegated to the game manager role, I feel like it makes sense for where he is right now. And I feel like it's a role that he can play successfully. And he does that for a lot of the half. And then he ends the half with that terrific back back shoulder touchdown to Robbie Anderson. I feel like that's a really smart role. And that's really, like, realistically exactly what Ryan Tannehill was doing in Tennessee as he started. He played that role, and that opened up some of the more explosive plays where you don't have to ask Sam Darnold to make those wow plays every single play like he was trying to do with the Jets, but you start him off by that as that game manager, and by the end, at the end of a half, give him 1, 2, 3 tries. I really think that could be a successful role for Darnold, and I think it's a smart move by Carolina.
I'm gonna keep it like short. I think what you said is true. I would just say the main thing, if I'm the Panthers, I want to keep Sam Darnold in the pocket. Like, he tried to make so many of these, like, heroic plays outside, and yeah, sometimes he'd connect. Right back in with New York, we saw some of those throws to Berrios, right, against the Colts and the Niners. But like, you'd also get just some terrible interceptions or terrible plays. If I'm them, I want to keep Sam Darnold in the pocket. That's just what I would want to do. I think that's just the main thing I would say. And you're right. Like, some of those throws he had, the one to Robbie Anderson, I was really impressed with. I thought it was a good throw. I just think, now with Carolina, you have those downfield weapons though, with DJ Moore and Robbie, and even T Marsh, right? Terrence Marshall. So it's hard to kind of see Darnold be in that role. And, it's hard for him to elevate those three guys. But honestly, we just have to wait and see how this offense looks, because Christian McCaffrey is going to get that huge role, right? Like he always does. And, how is Darnold going to is he going to elevate this offense as how it looks? No, not really. He's just going to kind of keep him afloat as a game manager. But I would like to see him develop, hopefully. Like, I know some of his mechanics have been shot through in the first 3 years here, but I would like to see if Matt Rule could kind of use him and develop him a little bit more in Carolina. That would be what I'd like to see, because again, I was never the biggest fan of his game in USC or in New York, but I think here he's got a real shot. I thought any quarterback who went to Carolina would have a real shot just because of the offense they have around him. And unfortunately, it was Darnold, but I think he could really, turn it around here if they keep him in the pocket. That's my main thing. I think he escapes.
I think right now, like, he's probably going to play that role. Like, it's not Kirk Cousins exactly, but in New York, the Jets needed Sam Darnold to make all the plays. Like, the offense, they would have a good day when he had a good day. And I feel like in Carolina, they've got Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Terrace Marshall, a pretty decent offensive line, and Christian McCaffrey, and that defense that can win those low scoring games. He's just got to play safe football. He's going to be a game manager, I'll bet, to start it off. And I think that if that works out, that'll open up things for him, and they'll open up the offense just a little bit more, get him on the run on a bootleg in an easy completion, and then let him open it up. Maybe try and make 1 or 2 big plays to score some points. But it is kind of a tough pill to swallow that I'm going to have to see him be a little bit pedestrian. He's going to be limited, mostly because, like, he hasn't earned the opportunity to be anything more. He hasn't. And I'll admit that unselfishly, he has not earned a whole lot in his first couple of years, but I do think that this can be a successful role for him. Of course, going to be watching it the whole way, going to be rooting for him. And I think that
ironically, they play the Jets week 1.
Yeah. So
which is so funny to me. That's the Jack Smith game. That's what I wrote it down as.
Yeah. So my dad went to Vegas, and I asked him to put down like a little bet for me. And I was like doing a little parlay, and I was flip-flopping like Jets, Panthers, Jets, Panthers, Jets, Panthers. I'm like, I think the Jets are pretty good. The Panthers are really good. Do I actually trust Sam enough? I went with the Jets just because, like, I wanted to be a little bit faithful, and because I was a little hesitant about whether Darnold could get it. And then at the last second, I asked him to take it off, and he did, because I after I saw, all this stuff with game manager Sam and all of that, I do think the Panthers can be a really good team, and it's not going to take Sam being that amazing quarterback that maybe I once thought he could be. And I hope he can just kind of build his way up like that quarterback ranking list, earn a little bit of respect, kind of like Ryan Tannehill did. And so
this
I'm
seems like a whole like full circle coming to an end with this whole Sam Darnold arguments that we've had. Like, hearing you say that, I feel like it's finally coming to that stopping point.
Yeah, you and I are probably in the same spot right now as like when it comes to him.
Oh yeah. Which is really, really ironic considering how different we were on him when he came into the league, which is so cool. But yeah, 3 years just fly by, man.
Yeah. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you're listening on YouTube, please consider leaving a like, leaving a comment, letting us know what you thought, and hitting the subscribe button. If you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else where you find your podcasts, please consider following the show and leaving a 5-star rating if you really enjoyed the episode. We'll be back next week, all three of us, with a really big episode, picks for the first time this season. We're super excited to get into it. Football is so close. We will see you guys next week. We've been the Cold Hard Truth Podcast. Thank you so much.